Alright, so I'm playing some more Call of Duty 2019 Modern Warfare. This is 6v6 team deathmatch on the Picadilly map. So this footage is from yesterday. So it includes the most recent update. I don't know if you've noticed, but now whenever you spawn in, there's kind of like a motion blur effect around the edges of the screen. I think it's not game changing, but it's worth pointing out. But the main topic that I want to talk about today is accessibility in video games, because I've just found out earlier today that today, May 21st, is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And I've just heard about it today, but apparently it's recognized on the third Thursday of every May. Accessibility is something that should be considered regardless of what industry or domain you're in or interested in. But definitely, I think video games has the potential to be kind of like the leading domain in that regard, just because it's so technology driven and because it's such a global hobby, right? But I think today it's really kind of accommodations, assistance to ensure that people with disabilities have a comparable experience to the standard or traditional or dominant usage. Kind of going on, what was I saying? So basically, yeah, the industry has a ways to go. It's really just seen as like an optional thing. So I mean, Modern Warfare 2019, for example, Doom Eternal, they both have 3 different colorblind assistance options to accommodate 3 different types of color blindness. It's worth pointing out because these types of games, they're AAA titles, but they're kind of the exception and not the rule. Like, as far as I know, they're the only games that have that kind of customization. I would actually say that Modern Warfare 2019 is pretty good in that regard. Besides the colorblind options, there's the subtitles that appear not just in the campaign cutscenes, but during gameplay. So if you have them enabled, characters who call out positions, their audio chat, the radio chatter will appear on screen as text. But they don't, I mean, maybe for balancing reasons, there's no closed captioning to represent footsteps and other non-verbal audio cues. Obviously, that's a disadvantage if you're hearing impaired, or maybe you're like me, you like to listen to podcasts and YouTube videos and whatnot while you play. I do that more often than not. So I find that probably I don't pick up on footsteps of other players, opposing players, when I should. But there might be people who are in a position where they can't play at full volume because maybe people in their household are sleeping or whatever. Right? So it's not just people with permanent disabilities, or you have to consider people who are at like in temporary or situational disadvantages. So there's the visual disadvantages, audio disadvantages or hearing disadvantages, and there's also like physical disadvantages. So people who are physically disabled, maybe they can't use one or both of their hands at full capacity, or maybe certain fingers are not fully functional. Again, right? Maybe someone who's normally able-bodied, but they broke their arm or they just sprained their wrist or whatever, right? Can you customize the controls to your liking? Like on consoles, you can't really do that. Most games will have like a handful of preset controller and button layouts, but it's rare that a console game will let you customize every function, every mechanic, and then assign those functions to whatever button you want, right? I know that the PS4 system menu has an accessibility section in which you can, I guess, permanently remap buttons and whatnot. I'm sure the Xbox One has the same type of functionality, but I think going forward, especially with the next generation, there's really no excuse for developers not to allow players to totally customize controls and assign whatever buttons they want to whatever functions. Just things like also like accommodation for people who are at some type of cognitive disadvantage. So, I mean, you can make a joke of people who are low intelligence, but maybe also people who have some type of cognitive disability. Maybe they have attention deficit disorder and they can't, they can't pay attention for too long, or maybe they have short-term memory loss, and so memorizing sequences of codes and whatnot is incredibly difficult. Or people who have dyslexia, right? Showing hide elements that are hard to read because the text is too small, or maybe the font is not
by the double-decker bus.
easy for people to distinguish the letters. I mean, I'm thinking of Battlefield 5. I haven't played that game, but I've seen footage in which the subtitles are in white text, but there's no like black outline to make that text distinct from the background, especially because one of the war stories takes place in Norway, where it's like covered in snow, so people can't separate the text from the background. That type of thing. And also, there might be people who are playing a game in which the main language is not their first language, and so they're not able to comprehend what's being presented and said in time. I think generally games are kind of good in terms of like difficulty levels. Most games have different difficulty levels, and generally you can switch on the fly, or maybe if you're struggling in a section, the game will suggest that you reduce the difficulty level. Some games have experimented with adaptive difficulty, but it's hard to get right. I mean, Resident Evil 4 is probably a game that people point to as a game doing that sort of thing well, and I agree. But just things like in-game help systems, making objectives clear. You never want to, aside from like puzzle games, you never want to have players spend 20, 30, 40 minutes just kind of like aimlessly shooting or wandering. I'm thinking of like Resident Evil 6 because I've been replaying that. I mean, I played the PS3 version when it came out. I got the platinum, so I know what to do for the boss fights and whatnot. But I remember the first time I played that game, I would spend like half an hour just not knowing what to do. So I'm kind of, when I talk about that type of thing, it's more usability. I think people kind of use those words interchangeably, and definitely both elements of games are things that should be interrogated and assessed whenever we're examining games, like reviewing them. I think as readers, consumers, viewers of video game media, we should like bring that up, because like if you're reading a review on a mainstream outlet or watching a review on a YouTube channel, it's really rare that people actually bring that up. Like they'll evaluate the game's story, presentation, gameplay, and those are important elements, but they should also have sections in which they evaluate the game's accessibility in terms of accommodation, and also the game's usability in terms of like how effective and efficient and intuitive it is for players to do what they want to do and what they need to do. So I'm thinking of maybe doing some game reviews on this channel, and that's something that I would definitely have time to have a section for. I would allocate some time to evaluate games accessibility and usability. Because once you start bringing it to the forefront, that's when people will realize, okay, we should then incorporate into their games. So we have a ways to go, but I think video games have that potential. Thanks for watching.